degrees in biological sciences. I'm a zoology major and he was a Hawaiian studies major. And through each one of our studies, we both kind of came to the realization of the importance of Native Hawaiian plants, one from the cultural side and one from the environmental side. And it just, he wanted to put native plants at his place. I wanted to put native plants at my place. And we're like, let's just go shopping for native plants. And so we went shopping through all the nurseries in Waimānalo and we found no problem. And we found maybe a couple of Ohilas here and there. And once, we started to realize all of these, unfortunate situations of nobody has native plants, then we started to try to learn more about it, try to learn about how to propagate, and then we started, just propagating native plants as a hobby. And then later on, we were fortunate enough to turn it into a business, and that was 24 years ago. So yeah, I know I hate saying that, but it is what it is. But just to kind of get everybody into the mood and to understand where we're coming from, I got this little presentation. So I'll go through it, and if you, I apologize. I try to mix it up every now and then with different slides, but this is it. And since we're in a college setting, I often like to. Oh, sorry, I should have started with this. This is our nursery. And sorry, the formatting kind of got a little bit messed up from Google Drive. But we do, the basis of our company is our native plant nursery. We have 2 on Oahu. We're working on a third portion of land as a seed orchard to feed our nurseries. And then we're also working on possible expansions to outer islands. But in addition to our nursery, we are licensed landscapers. We do both residential and commercial landscaping. We landscape Turtle Bay Resort. We landscape all of the resort. We landscape the airport. We just finished the Amazon warehouse that's being built. So the concept of what we do can be easily transferred over even to the commercial side. And we also do, like I said, residentials. And then we, before we were landscapers, we did habitat restoration. So we still do that. And we still, that's probably the biggest component within our company that we enjoy doing the most, because it's like a direct contribution to ecosystem rejuvenation and cultural rejuvenation. We just finished a 90-acre restoration in Honolulu for Kamehameha Schools surrounding their lower wetland regions. But yeah, I love that. But this is our nursery in Haia. So, being that we're in school, start off with some quizzes, and just to kind of understand everybody's thought process as to what people think are native Hawaiian plants. So by a show of hands, I want you to raise your hand if you think A, Ohaiali'i is a native Hawaiian plant. So there's a multiple choice. We got one person thinks Ohaiali'i, 2. There's Ohaiali'i planted out here in campus, 3. That's it, only 3, okay. Lokelani. Everybody think Lokelani is a native Hawaiian plant? Anybody from Maui? It's the late flower of Maui. Nobody thinks the late flower of Maui is a native Hawaiian plant? Could be more than one answer. All right. Not saying much about Maui. Nioi, Hawaiian chili pepper. Anybody think the Hawaiian chili pepper is native? No? But it's the Hawaiian chili pepper.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Endemic
Native meaning, and I'll get to that. But yeah, just native. No, nobody? Thanks. The Hawaiian chili pepper. Native. All right. It's got a Hawaiian name too. Okay. Loa fern. At least Loa fern is native. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, cool. All right. So yeah, Ohaiali'i is not a native Hawaiian plant. It gets its name from our native Ojai, which is this guy right here. And it's because the leaves of this plant are kind of similar to the leaves of our Ojai. And when this plant was first introduced probably from someplace in the Caribbean. I believe it's where it's native to. The flowers are red and yellow, which are the color of alii, hence the name. But our native ojai, this guy right here, is an endangered species. And different varieties of this plant can be found on pretty much every island in Hawaii. But they're all listed as Sysvania tomentosa. This guy down here is called uhi uhi. And it used to be in the same genus as the ojai alii. But when you talk to people in Hawaii about what is uhi uhi, nobody really knows what uhi uhi is. And then you say, oh, what is ojai alii? And then they can write a whole, epic novel on what ojai alii is. So that's kind of the mentality that we set forth to try and change, is to get people to understand and recognize our native plants. This is another endangered species. In fact, wherever this plant is found, on whatever islands, it's usually one of the pet plants, meaning that there's 50 or fewer individuals remaining in the wild. Like on Oahu, there's very little of that. And PEP stands for the Plant Extinction Prevention Program. Actually, I don't think we use the PEP because there's more than 50 found throughout the state, but on each individual island, there's hardly any. Okay, let's see. Oh, we're frozen.
Right now?
Oh, there we go. Oh, we're back to the bottom. B. Lokilani, Nioi, Kauai. Okay, all right. Yes, Maui is the only island that doesn't have a Hawaiian plant as its or any Hawaiian thing, period. Now has Hawaiian shells. Molokai has Kukui, which technically isn't native, but we'll get into that. But Maui is the only island that has a introduced plant, like a recently introduced plant. However, we do have plants that are native in the rose family. One is ule, and ule is a pretty common shrub that you can see on pretty much any ridge height here on the leeward side of Oahu. And then we also have ohelo papa that's in the rose family. You guys know what ohelo papa is? I guarantee everybody in this room knows what ohelo papa is. You guys just don't realize that we actually have a native one. Strawberries. Yeah, strawberries. We have different. We have an endemic strawberry that looks just like your regular strawberries, found on the larger shield volcanoes. So Haleakala, Mauna Kea, Mauna Loa, and Hawaiian strawberries. We don't have any on Oahu. And raspberries too. But we don't have any raspberries on Oahu. We have raspberries on pretty much every other island except Oahu, Kaho'olawe, and Niihau. Yep, you guys are all right. No such thing as a Hawaiian chili pepper. And every time I see people post about it and call it a Hawaiian chili pepper and call it nioi or wai nioi, oh. So irritating. And then you ask them about, oh, what is nioi? And then they'll be like, oh, the Hawaiian chili pepper. I'm like, nope. We actually have two native trees, one endemic, one indigenous. I'll talk more about that. Called nioi. But nobody knows, the majority of people don't know what they look like or what it looks like or even what it is. And it's this guy right here, Eugenia Ko'olawensis. This is a pet plant. So there's fewer than 50 individual plants remaining on Oahu. But this genus, Eugenia, is the same as, anybody heard of a Suriname cherry? The little pumpkin looking fruits? Yeah. So everybody knows about Suriname cherries, but we don't even know about our own Hawaiian nioi, other than this thing. So Hawaiian chili peppers are not native, but nioi is native, and that's this guy right there. We have another indigenous one called Eugenia renmortiana, but they're both called definitely not low. And that was one that even took me by surprise. And usually takes a lot of people by surprise, and then it usually offends somebody. And a lot of times, hula dancers or, holy practitioners will come up and say like, hey, what are you talking about? There's references to Lawa'e, it's different mele and different oli that predate European contact. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't doubt it, but Lawa'e, was that mele or that oli, created on Kauai? Because if it were, then this fern right here on Kauai specifically is known as Lawa'e o Makana. So it could be referencing this fern that's from Kauai. And this is how the introduced fern, this guy right here, gets its name because it has similar growth habits of having that rhizome that crawls across the surface, and it's fragrant. Or we don't even know when that thing was, that mele or that oli was created, or where it was created, and our brains are so fixated that when we hear the word Lawa'e, we automatically think of a fern. But we also have several native trees called Āina. So, and some of them got a little bit fragrance in the leaves or the low. So that mele or oli could be referencing the low or the leaves of the Āina tree. Yeah. But this guy right here kind of just made its 100th birthday anniversary or whatever of being found in Hawaii. The first time that this thing was ever recorded in Hawaii was in 1990. Definitely not that. So yeah. And in addition to this, I just kind of posted this slide on our IG not too long ago. Oftentimes these plants are associated with Hawaii, and a lot of people believe that they're native, but they're not. Even our avapuhi and olena are both Polynesian introduced plants. They're not native.
Lily, really?
Yeah, lilikoi, or make it sound more Hawaiian and add that okina in there and call it lilikoi. It still doesn't make it Hawaiian. Yeah, guava, ka'u oranges. That bums out a lot of people. Ka'u oranges and kona coffee is just oranges and coffee found in those respective places. However, I actually think ka'u oranges are the descendants of and this is just my personal opinion, are the descendants of what Captain Cook from. Because Captain Cook actually, he brought oranges to Hawaii. And you know what's the Hawaiian word for orange? What's the Hawaiian word for What's the Hawaiian word? Alani. Alani. Alani is actually the name of a Hawaiian tree. Because when the oranges first got introduced and you smell it, it smells exactly like the leaves of Alani. And so how we reference the color orange to the name Alani is kind of a new thing. There's a whole bunch of different words that describe that color orange. It's just because oranges smell like Alani, we call the color. Alani is related to mokihana. So if you ever smelled what a mokihana smells like, that's what Alani is. I have a question. Yeah. What about the Maile? Maile is native. Yeah, Maile is native. The avapuhi, you guys ever, I'm gonna get into this. You guys ever bought Paul Mitchell avapuhi shampoo? Yeah. You know what's funny about that? There's no avapuhi in it. So the avapuhi, so he took the name, God rest his soul, took the image of the flower on as the logo, and took the story from Hawaiians to sell this product. And that's the product. And they pride themselves on using all these botanicals, and they put in bold writing all of the scientific names of all the botanical ingredients that they have, on the back of the bottles or on the back of whatever products that they use. The scientific name for our shampoo ginger.
Okay, well, I'll be there.
Really easy to distinguish. Zingerber is their own bit. Look on the back of the bottle. Nope, they don't got that. What they do have is this, the invasive ginger. And they even have a avapuhi farm or whatever. And they're not growing Hawaiian shampoo ginger at their farms, they're growing this. And they don't even have to grow it, it's invasive. So, no, Kahiti one is also invasive, that's a different one. Yeah, yeah. All gingers are pretty bad, actually. And even to a certain extent, because we no longer use abapuhi, the shampoo ginger quotas we're out here for, it's kind of taking over a lot of this. But yeah, I can stay on this all day. Oh yeah, shoots, and a whole other list of all these other things. All these proteas and anthuriums that we export as Hawaiian plants. No, Hawaiian host macadamia nuts are Australian. Yep, here's that Hawaiian chili pepper again. What else we got? Yeah, I don't know. Anything else on here? Oh, Pele's hair, Spanish moss.
Yeah.
That should say something. Spanish moss, not Hawaiian moss. The best is we always get calls in the nursery. Oh, is this Hawaiian plant nursery? Yep. You guys sell African too? Come on. So after breaking everybody's heart and saying what's not Hawaiian, let's talk about what is Hawaiian. And this is an example of a Hawaiian plant. This is called Nuku Iiwi. You guys ever heard of the blue jade vine? Not Hawaiian. But this is a red jade vine that is Hawaiian. And we try to break down what makes a plant native to Hawaii. And usually, well, not usually, every single time, it is a plant that gets here on its own without the help of man. That's the main ingredient, without the help of man. It usually gets here by one of the 3 W's or one of the 3 M's if you want to make it Hawaiian. And that's waves, or the M version would be moana, in the ocean. Floating over on ocean currents like naupaka. The naupaka fruit float in water. Naupaka kahakai does. Wind, the M version would be makani. And so a lot of our spores probably for our ferns got here that way, and possibly even ohia lehua got here that way, because the seeds of ohia lehua look like sawdust. Or wings, and the M version would be manu, or birds. Oftentimes migratory birds that come here from Alaska will trap mud on their feet or on their feet or on their wings, have seeds stuck to them or possibly ingested and then released over here. So without the help of man is what kind of makes a plant or animal native. And that term native can be further broken down into 2 categories. One category being indigenous and the other category being endemic. And indigenous means that that plant or animal is native to Hawaii, but also native to other parts of the world. Endemic means that it's only found here and nowhere else in the world. And we have about 14 to 1500 plants that are native to Hawaii. 90% are endemic, only found here. And that's because we're pretty old. So here's an example of some plants that are endemic, but related to a plant that's not Hawaiian. We've kind of hanai this plant, but it's still not a Hawaiian plant. Plumerias. So plumerias aren't Hawaiian. They come from Central and South America. But we love them for lei making. And then we completely forget about these guys, which are native. And there's a 4th one. So these are 3 different ones. So this guy right here is called Hau, Rauwolfia sanosense. This one right here is called Holei. And this one right here is Kaulu. This one right here is another pet plant, unfortunately. These guys aren't common at all, no matter what island you're on. And these guys are also not common. But the Hawaiian name Hau is also the Hawaiian name for iron. So iron is really hard, and when iron was first, discovered or utilized by Hawaiians, they called it Hau after the wood of this tree, because this wood is extremely hard as well. But all of these plants are in the plumeria family called Papahana. There's a 4th one. Anybody know what that 4th one is? I guarantee you guys probably know one. You just don't know that it's a relative of plumeria. And somebody brought its name up earlier today. Finally. So question. How bush? How bush is HAU. And HAU how bush is not native as we know of it yet. but it is considered a Polynesian introduction. So that's another thing. Any plant that I would call Hawaiian would either be native or Polynesian introduced. And as far as we know, Hau is Polynesian introduced, but that's HAU, that's in the plumeria, hibiscus family. Question.
Because I understand like the only way that some of the things will grow here that we have now is because of the TWs, right? But how did because first we have the volcano, the eruption, then we have the birds and the moss. Do you know
Which one's same
how
birds?
Yeah.
Probably the ferns and potentially Ohia was probably one of the first plants to arrive and start breaking down lava rock into soil and in rain erosion, you know? So, but yeah, that's about it. The thing too, when we talk about like propagation of plants, you know, these volcanic islands are relatively young. They don't really have extremely rich organic soil. One key component that we often are missing in the health of our forests is bird droppings, because we don't have birds anymore. And not only that, seabirds. So a lot of our seabirds would forage out in the ocean, but nest at the very summit of our mountains. And from there, they take all of that, you know, biomass that they eat out in the ocean, bring it up into their nests, and then it just trickle down, you know, there's a trickle down effect of nutrients. And now we hardly have those, you know. So, but yeah, there's a lot of different things to factor as to why we're in kind of a dire straits.
Hold on, because we have this infestation of pigeons everywhere.
Yeah, that's good, we should. Honestly, yeah, that's not a bad idea. But then pigeons also harbor avian diseases that our native birds don't have the ability to fight against. So this is the last part of what we consider a Hawaiian plant, Polynesian introductions. And so things like kalo, our state tree is kukui. That's a non-native tree, but it's still considered Hawaiian. That's another one that if you ever go hiking or driving around, you can see how much kukui is spread in our forests because we don't use it like how it was intentionally brought here for. It's a candle nut tree, but we don't need, you know, candles anymore. We have, what is that? Here one. We have Bath and Body Works. We don't, it used to be chewed up and spit out over the water so that it reduced glare so that you can see opelu, but every fisherman has fish finders now. We don't make lei out of it anymore because we buy kukui nut leis from Walmart. The only thing that we utilize it for today is kinamura, for poke. We just can't consume enough of it though. But things like ulu is a Polynesian introduction, but we grow more non-Hawaiian varieties of ulu here in Hawaii than the actual Hawaiian variety. We no longer have our Hawaiian chickens anymore, nor do we have our Hawaiian dogs. They've all been kind of bred out. Let's see, what else? We have Hawaiian yams that we call uhi, but more people here would be can recognize it as ube. So if you ever eaten ube is it's found throughout the Pacific, but here in Hawaii we call it uhi. What was the Hawaiian dog? The Hawaiian dog was this little tiny curly tail, like old school, like old world dogs have curly tail, and yeah, it was just this little tiny dog. That's actually one I would like to try and bring back. So these are all different examples of Polynesian introduced plants. And even within that realm of plants, we have a bunch of things that are unique to Hawaii, like all of these different varieties of kalo, ava. This right here, these two. You ever had hopia, dessert, the coconut dessert? That's the pia in hopia. That's the Hawaiian, the Polynesian arrowroot starch. Sugarcane, and right here is our uhi or ube. And then these are ipu, or the gourds that were used for hula and calabash. So why should we care? Who cares? about what's Hawaiian and what's not Hawaiian. We kind of got to. We have the unfortunate distinction of being the extinction and endangered species capital of the planet. And kind of loosely, you know, anytime a plant or animal goes extinct, it's bad because it also affects other plants or animals that depend on it. But from a cultural perspective, every time one of those animals or plants go extinct, a cultural practice is also threatened, you know, going extinct as well. And once you lose all your cultural practices, then your people go extinct pretty much. This is, so when you look at this graph, look how old this is. It's gotten worse, but there's really no like concise revision of this list that I could find yet. But focus on this number right there, 1486. That's the total number of native plant species that we have in Hawaii. Of this number, 111 of them are completely extinct, gone. Then extinct in the wild. 5 different plant species no longer exist in the wild, but exist in cultivation. That number is actually increased. And so is this number. But we've actually found a couple species that were thought to have been extinct, but not more than what has gone extinct since 2000. One in the wild. There's 14 different species of plants that are down to the last plant remaining in the wild. That's kind of, so these numbers right here are kind of shocking and staggering. 2 to 20 individuals in the wild. There's almost 100 different plant species that have less than 20 plants remaining in the wild. And they're not all together. They're kind of like all over the place, you know? And so once you get down to these numbers, that's like trying to sustain a population of humans, but you can only make babies with your system. I mean, that's kind of what it is. And nobody wants to do that. And even down here, like 21 to 100 individuals in the wild, there's 115 on top of this now. 115 individual species that have less than 100 individuals remaining. So on and so forth. And the reason for that is our most biologically diverse zone that held the most amount of species, you know, plants and animal wise, was our lowland dry forest. Now, lowland dry forest is pretty much all of it looks like this. And if it doesn't look like this, it's a pasture. And that's the main reason why we've lost so many different plants and animal species.
Or it might be like that big Howard grove.
Yeah, it might be a bunch of invasive. Usually all those hollywood groves at one point was cleared for ag. And then we introduced plants that are highly invasive and tend to take over and dominate areas. And most of our invasive plant species were introduced intentionally and outplanted intentionally by the Hawaii Sugar Planters Association and the provisional government at the time. They pretty much went all over the planet, found the fastest growing plants and outplanted them to improve the watershed, because prior to that, we had cows roaming everywhere. There was a kapu placed on cows when they were introduced into Hawaii. And when that kapu was placed, they just went to town on our native plants. So a lot of our native plants evolved to lose their natural defenses because they evolved here without having a need to protect themselves, because we didn't have any grazing mammals that they needed protection from. And then one by one, we introduced all of these grazing mammals that kind of wiped them all out. Anybody know the Hawaiian name for cow? Anybody know the Hawaiian name for goat? It's cow. The Hawaiian name for goat is cow, K-A-O, because it was accidentally called one and it gets stuck. So it was given the Hawaiian name for goat is cow, and then finally we got cows introduced into Hawaii. So K-A-O is the Hawaiian name for goat. And then when actual cows and cattle got introduced into Hawaii, the name cow was already used. So then we had to call it pipi, which is Hawaiianized for beef. It was beefy. So yeah. Somebody messed up. So this is our nursery, and this is what we try to hope, you know, transition us out of this, you know, darkness of extinction and endangered plants and endangered animals and losing our culture. We, as much as possible, we we spend most of our time trying to bring in new plants into cultivation just so that we know the best ways to do them and which ones are most practical that can serve dual purposes. You know, one is it even, can we even grow it? Sometimes are very restricted to elevation, maybe mycorrhizas inside of the soil. And then two, does it have a benefit from just being grown outside of just being grown? Like, is it good at controlling erosion? Is it good at, you know, enhancing other forms of native wildlife around there? So there's a bunch of different things that we kind of go through in order to determine which plants that we want to focus on. This is some of our restorations that we've done in the past. Try to see this one right here, Kupiki Piki O. That one is probably the most like direct, like, oh my gosh, what we did actually made a difference. This is out at Black Point, and it was very difficult to do this job. It was very small, tiny little area. But what made it difficult was the people that live around it. So if you've ever gone down to Black Point, it's just all these big multi-million-dollar homes, and everybody there is, in their world, the most important person on the planet. Yeah, question. So, yeah, right down there. Yeah, right down there. And there's a couple cool people. But anyway, some people loved what we were doing, some people hated what we were doing, but we were doing this small little restoration on this plot of land that originally was being sold for somebody to buy a house and build a house on. And this is how much money people have. Which is stupid money. There's money and then there's stupid money. So one guy didn't like his neighbor. Hated his neighbor. So what he did was, and the neighbor lived next to this lot that we bought. And he lived on the other side of the neighbor. He bought the lot and then for like, I think almost $8 million. Then donated it to the Audubon Society, so that the Audubon Society could preserve it as a bird sanctuary. So that when the birds come, they're loud. Just so that he could screw his neighbor. And it was great. And then when we got there, and we got asked to help with the restoration of it, there were 33 birds on that year's bird count. And then over 2 years, because we only have like a 1 month window from the time that the baby birds fledge, and then to when the adult birds come back for the following year, the mate and the babies. We got like a month, and so we did it over 2 years. And by the time we were done after the 2-year restoration, and then going into the 3rd year, it went from 33 birds before we got there to 208. So it was really loud. And the comment, like, I grew up knowing that place as baby's cry, because when the birds come in, it's the Uwa'ukani, the wedge-tailed shearwaters. They come in, they burrow, and when they're in and around their burrows, it sounds exactly like babies crying. So it's kind of sketchy because you hear all these babies crying, but you don't see anything. And but yeah, that's what the guy did to his neighbor. Awesome money, but kind of stupid money. This is one that we did in Waimānalo at Kahawai Stream. And if you guys know anything about Hawaiian words, we did this at stream. So there's 2 ways of looking at it. Kahawai is the Hawaiian word for stream. It could be when that, whatever the stenographer was down there to map out Waimānalo, and he asked the local Waimānalo Hawaiian resident, like, hey, what is this? And then the Hawaiian guy just went, what? Like, the stream, what do you think? Or the more romantic way of thinking about it was, Waimānalo is arguably the first place that Polynesians settled when they came to Hawaii. So maybe it's the first kahawai of all the other kahawais that are named after. All the other streams are named after kahawai. But this is one that we did when we first started growing native plants. And this one I really like because same thing with the birds. We did this so that that DLNR didn't have to come in and do their normal stream maintenance regimen of herbicide and everything every now and then. Whenever weeds become a problem, they herbicide it, or they come in with their long arm mower and just mow everything down to the ground, making all kind of bare dirt areas and just erosion. We took it from, I don't know if you can see this area back here. That's kind of what it looked like, but over here it was way worse. Over here there were Job's tear grasses in here, and on either side that they went straight across, and you had no idea that there was this big ravine in there. It was just straight grass. And so we cleared all of that out before DLNR went in and took everything, you know, sprayed herbicide, and then we collected native plants from around Waimānalo, and this is our stream project. Part of the thing, another reason why we did this too was Waimānalo translates to potable water, drinkable water. And being from Waimānalo, you know, I like that. Oh, makes sense. That's why you would settle there, because we got drinkable water. Well, this water right here, which is at the top of our project, certain times of the year was 10,000 times more polluted than polluted. So you kind of reach a baseline of like, oh, that water's polluted. Take that number and times that by 10,000. And what we're measuring is nitrates and phosphates, which is basically manure and fertilizers that come into the stream. And so that's, you know, obviously we're not going to drink that. But by the time that the water reached the end of our project down here, it was clean. And really the only thing that it touched was this plant in the middle that we kind of just let grow, which is called Āina. And that plant was actually found here naturally. That plant is right here. When we were clearing stuff out, we just left it. And then it eventually, because there's so much fertilizers and nitrogen and phosphates in the water, that thing just took off. And so we just kind of left it. And then by the end, it was clean. So if you've ever gone in Waimānalo to go surf at, like, you know, Punananivo or Bellows, sometimes a year the water is like fluorescent green. That fluorescent green is a phytoplankton bloom, because the phytoplankton are plants in the, you know, algae in the ocean that explode when high amounts of nitrogen come in. And that's caused from all the nurseries and all the farms in the back of Waimānalo. So that was in 2002. By 2004, DLNR deemed our project, all of these plants, a flood hazard, and mowed everything down. They never touched this thing in 4 years. And then we gave them an SOP book on how to manage it. Talked with our representatives at the time, and that guy looked at it, and in the meeting goes, so you're telling me I gotta get out of my air-conditioned tractor and hand pull all of these weeds? And I'm like, you don't have to, but your, you know, people that work for you can. And it took us half a day every 3 to 4 months to do that. That's nothing, you know? So he's like, yeah, whatever. And then by 2004, he just went through and he just mowed everything down with his long arm. Yeah. So, but when we got here, there was no wetland birds in this zone. By here, we had 17 endangered allied ula utilizing this. So yeah, we had 8 breeding pairs and 1 straggler for breeding. Same thing here, Waimānalo stream. It kind of looked like this. We actually started to clear over here already, the access road. And then, but the one thing that's still in this picture that you can still see is this drainage culvert. It's here too, but it's just covered with vines right there. And then slowly but surely, we kind of opened it up to get it to look like this. And then the same thing, DLNR needed a flood hazard. Well, at this point, you couldn't see the water. You couldn't even hear the water flowing. And then we got it to look like this. Yeah.
Is that more than 4,000?
This?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I don't know. I think he needed job security or something. I think he was worried about us not having, you know, preventing him from having more jobs. But what's cool about this is after this rain event, so you can see it kind of flooded out. Usually this is about the flow of the stream. After it flooded out, I came back like a week later and I counted, I'm standing on a bridge right now, this bridge. I counted 400 o'opu migrating back upstream. So you know that if you do the work and you put the time into it, you know, there's a benefit for it. This is a project that we did to increase bird habitat on a golf course. So the area was big enough to support way more birds than were currently there. It's just that they didn't have the right plant material around for them for nesting or foraging. So we converted it. And we increased the population by over 50%. Yes.
Shift gears a little.
Yeah.
To the business.
Sure,
aspect of
sure.
it.
Let me,
Sorry.
no, it's fine. I knew I was coming in on the
But I
time.
know, yeah.
But this is, let me get through some of these things. Oh, here's that Kupikipiki one. Here. So the reason why we were doing all of these habitat restoration when we first started our company was because we weren't licensed landscapers. And so to get around that, we were like, oh no, we're not doing landscaping, we're doing habitat restorations. And so there was really no definition as to what we were doing. So we weren't doing it on a residence, we weren't doing it on some sort of commercial property. But we acquired a whole bunch of experience doing irrigation, doing management, pest management, whatever on these sites. At which point we transferred into obtaining our landscaping license. And then once we started our landscaping license, then we started to shift a little bit, plus too, a lot of money that was earmarked for this type of restoration work kind of got cut out of the federal government's budget, which related to the state not having money to do that kind of work anymore too. And so the transition to landscaping kind of worked out perfectly. And so no matter what, our nursery is still the hub of everything that feeds our other business or revenue streams. And then in some cases, the plants themselves and the projects themselves feed off of one another. So we did this is that Black Point restoration. And what was cool is that I collected plant material from out on the point, propagated it, and put it into this restoration. And then we got a contract to do somebody's house if they like the work that we were doing out at Black Point. So I went back down to the site and now I'm collecting the plant material. Oh, I'm sorry. We actually got a landscape before we did the project in Black Point. And then I collected the plant material from the point before we did the restoration and put it into the landscape. And then somehow the plants down on the point died. But we had it growing in the landscape. So then when we got this contract to do the restoration, I collected the plant material from the landscape, put it into the restoration project. And then that couple got divorced. The lady got a new husband. He wanted a whole renovation on the property, put a crane on our landscape, killed all of our plants in the landscape, then rehired us to re-landscape it. At which point I had to go back out to our restoration site and get the plant material to put back into their landscape. So it's kind of like a give and take.
I have a question.
Yeah,
I know, I'm going back to that stream.
yeah.
It's in the back of Waimānalo, we get the waste back over there.
That one is on the other side of Waimānalo, but yeah, same thing. I mean, that water kind of goes into, I think it goes into, but it's the majority of all of that wastewater. And it's like this for every community. Can come directly from the residents or it's coming from the storm drains. You know, the storm drains and all of the waterways that feed into these two main streams. So just imagine that entire Waimānalo watershed, all of the horses, all the cows, all the nurseries back there, all of that fertilizer leaching out into the ground and then ultimately into the draining ways that come out into the stream. So yeah, a lot of times our streams are like gross. Just look at the Aloha. The Aloha Canal is a perfect example as to all of these different watersheds and all of these different stream channels feeding into one exit point.
And I guess, thank Allah over there, because we did that cleaning over there before when I was in job for.
Yep.
We that, and the public over there can be much, but it's more vegetation from the
Mountainside, yeah, it's pretty bad. But yeah, so our revenue streams within our company come from primarily landscape, and then secondary plant rentals. Well, actually, the main source is landscaping, and then slash habitat restoration. We kind of clump those together. And then our nursery sales, and then with our nursery, in addition to providing our own jobs with plants, we do contract grows for other landscapers. We do contract grows for other nurseries. And we also supply the big box stores with native plants. So all of the Home Depots on every island has a little native plant section. And that one, we kind of got into it. And I don't know if you heard, if she had mentioned the story before about how we got into the big box stores was, and that's actually what drove us to even start a business. Because like I said before, we're just a hobby. And what kind of drove us to be like, okay, let's try to see where this landscaping thing can go, was when I was in college, I paid for my college tuition, I was a sushi chef. So I used to make sushi in Waikiki. And that paid for my college tuition. And one night, I had these guys come sit down at my bar. I used to work at Odorico and Keon, which is in the Sheraton. But at Odorico, these two mainland guys came down, sat at my bar. One of them was pretty young, one of them was kind of old, and the younger guy was asking like, "Oh, there's all the cool spots to go hang out at." And so I was talking to him about that, and then he's like, "Oh, is this all you do? You know, you make sushi?" And I'm like, "Nope, I'm graduating in a couple weeks, my degree, with a zoology degree. And on the weekend, me and my friend, we got this Hawaiian plant nursery and just kind of grow these Hawaiian plants. Oh, you guys interested in selling any of those plants?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Thinking this guy from Ohio or wherever wants to take home some plants with him. And he goes, "Oh, you guys produce a lot of these plants?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, we're like the biggest native plant nursery there is." But at the time, we probably were, even though everything that we had can fit on the table. So I'm totally, pulling strings with this guy. And he gives me his card. And he goes, "I'm really interested in your guys' plants. You guys are interested. Here's my card. My name is," and I remember his name, Jason Feldman. His name is Jason Feldman. I'm vice president of Home Depot. And if you guys ever want to sell your plants at the Home Depot, just let them know that I sent you. And my reply to him was, I can't even say it because it was an expletive. But it was, what the F is the Home Depot? Because I had no idea what the Home Depot was at the time. We're talking back in 1998, 1999. And he starts laughing, and he goes, "Oh, it's a really big retail space, for home improvement stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, like City Mill, yeah, like City Mill." And so I'm like, "Ah, cool, man." So then I take his card, and I'm doing like my finals and everything, so I'm not even like concerned about this conversation that we had. And then finally, like, I finished my exams, and we're cruising around, me and my business partner, my friend. And I'm like, "Hey, I got this card. Let's go check this place out, So we roll up to the Evil 8, the one in downtown, Home Depot, and I'm just like, "What the hell is this?" And there's like a line for contractors and a line for vendors. And so we drove into the vendor lines, and then they asked us what we did, and we're like, "We do the Hawaiian plants." And then right there, that person was like, "Oh my God, we've been waiting for you guys." So apparently the guy had mentioned us, and we just kind of got the expedited rush through, like, "Here's all this paperwork, blah, 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 blah." And we get it, and we're like, "What the hell, what is this?" I'm like, "Well, I guess we're doing this, So right there at that moment, we kind of made the decision like, okay, I'm not going to grad school next year. Let's try and do this thing for a year and see where it takes us. I'll postpone, entering grad school. He was already in grad school, and he took a break from grad school. And it's like, if this thing works, we'll run with it. If it doesn't work, go back to grad school. So to this day, I only have my undergrad, because we've been going nonstop ever since. And we have, I think right now we have 40 full-time employees, and we operate, all of the Home Depots on all the islands. And now we're in City Mill. We're in City Mill too, but yeah, and the Navy Exchange. So yeah, that's kind of how we got our foot in the door to do a full-time commitment. Yeah.
How hard was it to meet on people's plan?
You know, it was way over our head when we got the vendor packet. The vendor packet was printed out on 11x14 paper, both sides, and was 126 pages long. Both sides, like, so it was like 252 pages. And so when we got it, the nursery manager at the time, they're like, yeah, it's kind of overwhelming. They're like, but they already had signed on with a couple of nurseries. And they're like, go and meet such and such person. And that such and such person was Ellen Yee and Warren Yee of Warren Yee's The Plant Place in Waimānalo. And they were like our parents in this whole, ordeal. And they told us exactly, so she went through, took our application and just highlighted all of the things that we absolutely needed to do. And forget the rest, which is like less than 1% of the whole actual package. And then put us in touch with the insurance guy, put us in touch with all the powers that needed us to get us off the ground. And ever since then, they've always been our nursery parents. And so that was really helpful. So as much as possible, when people always reach out for help, I use that as an example, and I'm always, willing to help out others when it comes to stuff like that. But yeah, it was kind of rough. Yes.
Was starting the market hard?
Starting the market was hard because there wasn't really a market. There was a nursery market and a plant nursery market, and there was a landscaping market, but there wasn't a market that addressed native plants specifically. And that's because, we would get these jobs and people want these Hawaiian plants, and then when we go and talk to them about it, they're like, oh, but what about the gingers and the heliconias and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, nope, we don't do that. And then we lose the job. So, but now, that's where the whole education side came into play. And when we started doing Home Depot, the first thing that we did was, because we knew that nobody knew what our plants were.
That's why this.
So we had all of these information signs. And so we tried to make nice pictures, we draw people into the pictures, and then these cool, interesting stories that would make people want to buy the plants for themselves. Because every single plant that we grow has a story to it.
Yeah.
Whether it's a cultural use or some sort of ecological benefit, it has that with it. So that part was easy. And then with the signs, though, people really got drawn to those signs at Home Depot. And one of the persons that got drawn to it was one of the editors for at the time when we had Star Bulletin newspaper. We don't even have Star Bulletin newspaper anymore. We have the Honolulu Advertiser or Star Advertiser. And when it was a Star Bulletin, I used to do an article every Friday, and I would feature a different Native Hawaiian plant. And that really got us off, like, as far as like where to go with native plants. And then what was cool about the Star Bulletin was that they let me put in there that, oh, you can also buy this plant at the Home Depot, which the Home Depot loved, because now everybody was reading this article and they would go there. So we would just stack the table with whatever plant that I had featured that week, and things would just sell. We went from having one table at Home Depot to having 6 tables at Home Depot, because we're just flying plants out of it. And that Home Depot in Honolulu is the highest grossing Home Depot of any Home Depot in the nation. So, pretty crazy. Even that Costco, the Costco over there too, is the busiest Costco.
But that one's on
Oh, for real? Oh, for a while, that Costco one in Iwale was. So, but yeah, so there's all of these different opportunities that kind of got put into our lap that we kind of pounced upon and made sure that we took advantage of it to maximize the benefit of it. But at the same time, we're still very mission driven. So everything that we do has to come back to having some sort of benefit for either plants or culture. And for us, whenever it comes to decision making, we go to that. So like even when we made the leap to do commercial landscaping, most of the times commercial landscapes, we don't have a say in it because they have a landscape architect. So the landscape architect is the one that makes the designs. So when we started to do that, I used to put these little brown bag lunch discussions together, and I would kind of sell it to different landscape architecture firms. So during their lunch break, I would go in and just like a setting like this, I'd give this presentation. And I would also start to feature these unique plants to try and make them feel like, hey, you guys can be the first landscape architect company to utilize these plants and be that much more unique than all the other landscape architecture firms. And then I go to the next landscape architecture firm and do the same thing. And we would try to, create the drive for the market and making sure that we have the plants available for whenever that, cash them. And so it's kind of like this cat and mouse game of trying to stay ahead of what they were and really giving no other option as to where to go except to come to us. And for us, I mean, that helped out in the beginning, but really we knew that we weren't going to be able to, satisfy our mission just on ourselves. So we actually embraced other nurseries to do native plants to whatever degree that they wanted to do. And for us, that just helped us, kind of have our mission come into fruition, but just had other people help us do that. But we just had to stay a little bit ahead of the game to make sure that, for us, business was always being driven towards our company before it gets disseminated elsewhere.
For like, so during that time, when you guys were still kind of,
Yeah.
what you guys like, I don't understand this yet.
Yeah.
So like, what are those,
Hiring for the first time, before it was, so this is actually kind of cool, yeah, that you bring this up. So when we first started our company, I didn't even have a credit card. Like I was still in college at the time, I was like 22, 21 maybe. And then I never had a credit card, but I was working as a sushi chef. So, and my business partner had a credit card and no job. So we would use his credit card, build his credit up, right? Because whenever we did get money from plant sales, the first thing we would do is pay off his credit card. Or I would just use my money that I got from my job to buy stuff, and then I would get reimbursed. And then quickly I realized that, nope, I get a credit card. So get a credit card if you don't have one. And write credit as much as you can, just don't default. So make sure that you're creating enough revenue to pay for your expenses. That was the first kind of little obstacle that we had to do. It wasn't really an obstacle, it just makes sense. But then now we need to scale up, right? And so when we first started, we had, like I said, we had a greenhouse that maybe fit the two of these tables in it. That was his dad, my business partner's dad's leftover vegetable greenhouse. We quickly outgrew that, and then they lived on an acre parcel. And there were these two big lychee trees that weren't producing lychee anymore. So we convinced the dad to cut down these lychee trees so that we could use that area to grow more plants. So we did that, quickly outgrew that. And then, but we still wanted to scale up. And then this is after we got the Home Depot contract. So we're still like trying as much as we can off of really small, limited amount of space. So then we went to our neighbor, and our neighbor had 2 acres, but about a quarter acre of it was just kohaole and grasses that they weren't able to keep up with. And so we convinced them that if we could use this space, we would maintain the entirety of their 2 acres. So then we cut down all of that grass and kohaole, turned it into a grow out space for our plants. And then every other week, we would mow and maintain the rest of their property, the rest of their 2 acres. So for us, that helped with our overhead because now we had, we're young, we had plenty of energy, and we could easily do that kind of work. But then now we outgrew that space. So then there was a moment in time where we had 3 different places in Waimānalo, not connected at all with all of our plants, which made it very difficult to do. That going in between each nursery and trying to remember inventory of everything of what we had where was difficult. And then in 2005, we approached Kamehameha Schools to see if they had any land. They were willing to help us out. And that's when we got the Hadia property that our main nursery is at now. But we kind of had to sell it to them. And for them, education is a big thing. And prior to that, we already had education programs in place, but it was being run through our company. the for-profit company. We never charged anybody. Anybody that wanted to learn about native plants, any school group that wanted to come out, we just brought them in. And it got so popular that it started to take away from our production. So when we got this new space in Bahia, it's like 65 acres. There was a warehouse on the property already that we wanted to convert into a classroom. And we wanted to start a nonprofit to handle all of the education side of it. And then that way we could get funding, because nobody wants to fund a for-profit for education. So we started a nonprofit to get funding to support our education program. And the education side of things really just feeds into people's understanding of wanting native plants. So I'm understanding the importance that native plants play on our culture and our environment. So ultimately that, you know, the more people we see, the more people that understand its value will in turn help support our business side.
What push you to beer with the first beer?
What is that?
What push you to like the first beer?
The plants, you know, being able to be the voice of these, you know, all of these different species that were here well before we were here. That's the easy part of it. You know, the money part came in eventually. Like I was still making sushi at night for 3 years after we started the company. So I was a full-time student. We pretty much every hour that was available when I wasn't a student, or I was a full-time sushi chef, pretty much. I worked like 35 hours a week at night, was dedicated to the plant side of it. So once I graduated, that was a huge relief of time and brain energy. And then when we finally started generating enough revenue so that I no longer had to work my night job, that was it. After that, it was smooth sailing, you know? And we still put in the time and work into the company, but we're doing it to ourselves now, right? We're investing in ourselves with our time. And so, to me, that was kind of the most important part, was getting our footprint established, you know, via all of these different components of the newspaper article, the signs at the store, being able to have all these nice plants at the stores, and going out and forcing people to know about these plants. In the long run, today, like there's more people now that support and understand native plants than I ever would have imagined 20 years ago.
We're just gonna do a soft close sort of after the hour.
Sorry.
No, but you wanna still invite, especially students who people to stay, maybe come up here, have like a little bit more time with you. I know we still have lots more questions, but so that'd be good. Yeah, let's give them a really important job.
It's hard to talk about what we do without understanding why we, you know, and so that whole thing is just to get people focused on to the why.
Could you guys talk to the folks that I'm just gonna have questions. So we're just gonna roll.
So those are the questions. Thank you.
So I think that if people have to leave, yeah, for on an hour, don't need to go unless people have to take off. And then if anyone wants to kind of put some things, yeah, and just like take a moment to transition, get your coffee, what you can see. Come up with that Talkstory. And while you guys are transitioning, a little quick announcement.
Oh,
thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
So we
I don't have a card, but,
we're gonna do closing projects based on April 23rd. Could it be located in the spring out of the great lawn? Our donation is to open us from Monday, to be located at the library and yeah, so the main goal of this, for you guys to bring clothes to the event and talk about, but if you have like more clothes than one, then you can donate to the report, but maybe if you come to the event or something. Thank you. Yeah, you guys want to see and just talk stories more a little bit, please feel free.
You have any questions?
Yeah, hang on, I was gonna ask you a question.
I just wanted to say hi. Reintroduce
Oh,
myself.
I'm sorry, this is waiting for years and years old.
But I'm also married to Annie Hood, so Hawai. And
But then, no, he leave.
You guys have.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know you guys have a lot going on all the time. I actually, we live parallel, like, you know, how it is when you're married, but like, he doesn't 100% know what I'm doing. I don't know 100% know what he's doing, but I know you got the Hawaii and everything going.
Was, you know, so once he worked with the military.
Yeah.
He's always up for us.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's you guys are, I'm glad you're able to partner. And then I also won the board of Hawaii Audubon.
Oh,
And I've been teaching here for 15 years, so.
So Blackbirds. Sorry, but they're the hardest people to work with.
The labyrinth are the real pains. It's funny because the story they tell now is that the Freemans wanted to keep their view. Okay, so the Freeman's son is the house
The house on the.
above.
Yeah.
And they like the view. But
Oh,
who
man.
knows? Who knows?
Andy was the one that was like, no. He hated that time.
Yeah, yeah. I think we